It was on a moonless night in the early summer months of 1993 that Jennifer Ertman and her best friend, Elizabeth Pena, would depart from the Spring Hill apartment complex off of West 34th Street in Houston, Texas, at around 11 p.m. in the evening. The girls were returning from a pool party, and they wanted to make it home before Elizabeth's 11:30 p.m. curfew. Since they were running a bit behind schedule, they decided to take a shortcut through the Clearbrook apartment complex, which would lead them out to a railroad bridge, and then out to a trail known as the White Oak Bayou through TC Jester Park. This shortcut had the potential of saving the girls about 10 minutes over their normal route. However, on this particular night, while walking along the bayou, these girls would be viciously attacked by a local youth gang, who would rape, assault, and kill the girls, leaving their bodies in a forest area near the south entrance of the park. This is truly one of the most violent and horrific tragedies that I've run across, and this video series is aimed at providing a level of clarity to the Elizabeth Pena and Jennifer Ertman case. Please strap yourself in as we get ready to dive into part 1 of 3. It's June 24th, 1993, and the day starts out like it normally would for the soon-to-be high school sophomores. The girls were in the midst of enjoying their summer vacation and are even planning to hang out later in the afternoon at Elizabeth's house. As luck would have it, they're going to get the chance to attend a pool party that's being held by their friend Gina Escamilla over at the Spring Hill apartment complex. At 4:15 in the afternoon, Jennifer's father, Randy Ertman, would drive his daughter over to Elizabeth Pena's house. Elizabeth lived about 4.5 miles away from Jennifer on a street called Lamont Lane. It was there that he would say goodbye to Jennifer, and the girls would spend the next few hours at Elizabeth's house as they eagerly looked forward to their plans for the evening. 14-year-old Jennifer was the only child of Randy and Sandra Ertman. She was described by those who knew her as being caring, intelligent, and had a good sense of humor. Jennifer had a love for jewelry, often wearing multiple necklaces, earrings, and rings. Fashionable but modest, Jennifer was also known for being a caring friend. 16-year-old Elizabeth Pena was the oldest of 3 children. Born to Adolf and Melissa Pena, Elizabeth had gone through a brief streak of teenage rebellion before entering Waltrip High School in the fall of 1992. Jennifer and Elizabeth would meet in their freshman year and quickly became close friends. Despite being just over a year younger than Elizabeth, her family would notice the positive influence that Jennifer was having on their daughter. They were genuinely thrilled that their daughter had found such a great friend. At approximately 8 o'clock in the evening, Elizabeth's mother would drive the girls to the Silver Creek Apartments on Mangum Road. Before dropping them off, Elizabeth would promise her mother that they would be back in time to make her curfew. Feeling satisfied with their agreement, Elizabeth's mother would drive off, leaving the girls to hang out with their friend, Gina Escamilla, for the next few hours. Meanwhile, in a neighboring suburb of Oak Forest, a small group of street thugs were getting ready to hold a gang initiation ceremony for 17-year-old Raul Villarreal. Villarreal had expressed interest in joining this group, who jokingly called themselves the Black and White Gang. They were a mix of teens, mostly between the ages of 17 and 19, and had a gang leader named Peter Cantu. Cantu had a long history of violent and disorderly conduct, and due to his frequent arrests, which involved stealing, car theft, assault, and even murder, he was well known to the local authorities. His ideal way of testing out the newcomer Raul Villarreal was to have him fight everyone in his gang. Peter would recruit the help of his friends, as well as one particularly vicious criminal named Sean Derrick O'Brien. the gang would get liquored up and would drive over to O'Brien's residence at the Clearbrook apartment complex. After recruiting O'Brien, the gang would head through a broken part of the fence that would lead them out across the railroad tracks and into the park to begin their brawl. Meanwhile, on the other side of West 34th Street, Elizabeth, Jennifer, and Gina would decide to go over to Gina's friend Chris's house. Chris lived in an apartment complex that was just down the street from Gina. It would take the girls only minutes to arrive at the Spring Hill apartment complex. Once there, they would hang out by the pool. It was now approaching 11 o'clock, and Elizabeth's curfew was coming up fast. This made Jennifer Ertman nervous. She didn't want her friend to get into trouble for missing her curfew, so she mentioned to Elizabeth that they should probably get going. The girls would head off on foot back towards Elizabeth's house. Their friend Gina Escamilla would accompany them at this time. Alright guys, so that does it for part 1 of this video series. Check back in for part 2, where we'll be discussing the different pathways that the girls had available to them, and also the inherent danger of walking through this park late at night. If you enjoyed watching this video, then please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you at the next one. Before we start today's video, I'd like to take this opportunity to give a mention to Corey Mitchell. I'm sure that many of you watching this video are familiar with who he is, but in case you're not, he was the one that wrote the book Pure Murder, a book which documents this awful tragedy and provides us with many answers as well. Without the work that Corey Mitchell had put in, we really wouldn't know what we now know today about this case. My goal with this video series is to address some of the questions that I've had ever since I first learned about the murders. Although the criminals were brought to justice many years ago, there are still some unanswered questions about why this crime came to be. I won't be going into the details of what happened to the girls during the assault, nor the trial of the criminals. That information has already been covered before. However, I would like to share with you what I have learned about this case. I know that many of us still have questions about it. So without further ado, welcome to part 2 of 3. The time is now 11:15 on the evening of June 24th, 1993. And the girls have reached the Clearbrook apartment complex on West 34th Street. They have about a mile to go to reach Elizabeth Pena's home, and at this point, they have a couple of different options available to them for reaching their destination. The first is to continue down West 34th Street until they reach the intersection of Jester Boulevard, which they'll take north until they come up to Lamont Lane. The second is to take the back way through to the park. We already know the direction that the girls would ultimately take, so let's just say for the sake of argument that they had continued along West 34th Street and had taken it up to Jester Boulevard. I've done a fair bit of research into the crime levels of this area, and from what I've been able to piece together, I can say that this particular stretch of West 34th Street probably wouldn't have been considered extremely dangerous back in the early 1990s. However, this part of Texas was experiencing issues with gangs and criminal activities were on the rise back then. I think it's very fair to say that this area would not have been a great place to be walking around at late at night, especially for two young girls. To further illustrate my point, I'm going to bring up a graph from crimegrade.com. This graph provides a street view of the areas that experience the highest amounts of crime. The green areas are the safest, and the red areas are the most dangerous. We can see right away that this park carries with it a much higher level of crime than the neighborhoods on the other side of the road. Now as we approach the corner of Jester Boulevard, we can see that there's not a lot in the way of streetlights. I would imagine that this area north of the taco stand would be quite dark late at night. In fact, it almost looks like a country road. We're going to head up a little bit further, and we've now reached a bridge. If you look off in the distance, the fenced area that you see is actually the back of the Clearbrook apartment complex, now known as the Montebello Apartments. The girls would have started their journey from back here by slipping through a gap in the fence. According to what I've read in Pure Murder, the fence actually had barbed wire at the top, yet another important reference to the amount of crime that was in the area back then. Now as we proceed up ahead, we'll notice that the sidewalk on the left side of the road is going to turn into a bike path. This trail is called the White Oak Bayou, and it eventually leads out into the park, but not before we hit the railroad tracks. And these tracks are actually quite important because they're one of the only ways out of this particular portion of the park. As we continue further ahead, we're now going to see that the sidewalk takes us into the park. There's also a sidewalk on the other side of the road, which of course you can take north. But let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that the girls had decided to head into the park. It's a nice summer evening. We'll just take a stroll through the park over here, and do you see that flattened land just past the trees where there's like an open area immediately before the forest? Well, this is the area where the gang members were fighting each other at. So I'd just like to point something out. Even if the girls had left the party early and they'd taken their normal route, they could have still run into the gang here. Now things could have been different for them, of course, but the threat of danger is still very much there. There's also the chance that they might have run into something else had they proceeded further along into the park. It does have some blind spots and areas where a potential predator could have also been hiding. However, this unfortunately pales in comparison to what I'm going to show you next. We're now going to explore the alternative shortcut that the girls had decided to take through the park. In order to access this shortcut, the girls would have had to walk all the way through to the back of the Clearbrook apartment complex. Once they reached the fence, they would have had to pull back a loose board, which would have allowed them access to the grassy area behind the apartments. There are no park lights in this stretch between the back of the apartments and the railroad tracks, nor would there have been any lights along the pathway ahead. This means that the girls would have had to navigate this path completely in the dark. Remember again, it's a moonless night and they don't have any flashlights with them. Now as we take a look at the surrounding terrain, we can immediately see that this area is much rougher looking than the pathway along Jester Boulevard. The grass here is very long, and there's a lot of gang graffiti as well. Another concerning element to walking along this path is the amount of overgrowth from the nearby trees. This would have made it very difficult to be sure of your surroundings as you're walking along the path. The potential for a predator to be lurking in the nearby forest, or perhaps even under the bridge, is another thing that you would have to consider. How easy would it be to get away quickly if you needed to? In my opinion, not very. This path is filled with blind spots where you can't be sure of your surroundings until you ascend into them. Even the bayou in the middle of the park provides another obstacle. The final stretch of this path involves walking up a blind hill. Off to the right, there's an area of open space that can't be easily observed until you've ascended the hill. And then beyond that is the White Oak Bayou, which you can take out of the park. I won't sugarcoat this when I say that it made me absolutely sick to my stomach when I first saw this bridge and pictured the girls walking across here late at night. Why would Elizabeth and Jennifer feel comfortable going this way? It's been a question that's always bothered me ever since I first learned about this case. And then I did some more research and I came across something very interesting. According to what's been reported, it was Jennifer Ertman that wanted to go this way and not Elizabeth Pena. Elizabeth actually lived fairly close to the park. However, Jennifer lived about 5 or 6 miles away from here. So you have to ask yourself, how is it possible that she would have the knowledge of the shortcut? She didn't live within easy walking distance of this park, yet she felt comfortable enough to suggest that they go this way back to Elizabeth's house. She even knew about the loose fence at the Clearbrook apartment complex. This indicates to me that Jennifer and Elizabeth must have taken this exact pathway many times. Why else would they have felt so comfortable with taking it late at night? It also stands to reason that both of the girls would have been very knowledgeable of the terrain along the pathway, and that the lack of visibility would not have presented a significant problem to either one of them. We also have to take into consideration that Jennifer Ertman had a curfew, and she hadn't told her parents that she was planning to spend the night at Elizabeth's house. Another thing that must be considered is the time in which the girls entered the park. The court records showed that the girls were attacked by the gang at roughly 11:30, at which point they were roughly a mile away from Elizabeth's house. Even if the gang hadn't been there, they still could not have made this curfew. Now this is a very interesting situation in which the girls know that they can't make the curfew, and yet they still choose to go into the park. Clearly their reason for going this way was not because of the curfew. So then why would they choose to go through the park? Why didn't their parents offer to give them a ride home? Why didn't the girls call their parents to get a ride back? Why were the parents comfortable with letting them walk back? In the next part, we'll be discussing the aftermath of what happened the following day, the timeline for when the police were brought in, and the reason why I believe there's a lot more to this case than was originally reported. I look forward to sharing that information with you in part 3. I will see you at the next one. Hello and welcome to our bonus content from the documentary series Innocence Lost. I'd like to start this off by saying that I am truly grateful to be able to provide you with this content and hopefully answer some of the questions that you might have about the Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena case. As you no doubt know, Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena were two teenage girls that grew up in Houston, Texas, back during the early 1990s. They were tragically murdered on the evening of June 24th, 1993, while attempting to walk through a public park. Sadly, the lives of the girls could have been saved had they gotten a ride back home from their parents. In this video series, we'll be taking a look at the backstories of both girls, the options that they had available to them, and the reason why I believe this crime was allowed to take place. This video will cover the girls' pathway through Jester Park, the location where I believe they were attacked, and also some very important information that could explain their decision for going through the park. Please strap yourself in as we get ready to dive into the bonus content of Innocence Lost. On the evening of June 24th, 1993, Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena would attempt to walk through a public park in Houston, Texas. Their reason for doing so was to make Elizabeth's 11:30 p.m. curfew. This is the official explanation that was given as to why they went through the park. However, I'm here today to tell you that I believe the official narrative is completely false. While it's true that the shortcut that they took through the back of the Clearbrook apartment complex probably is faster than taking their normal path back up Jester Boulevard, the truth is that you can actually take this shortcut without going through the park or even up to the railroad tracks. The shortcut that the girls took involved walking to the back of an apartment complex, pulling back a loose part of the fence, and then sliding through. Once they were on the other side, they actually had 3 ways of getting back to Jester Boulevard, a street which they would ultimately have to cross in order to get back home. Their first option is by far the simplest, and that is to walk directly east, roughly 600 yards, to Jester Boulevard. The second option is to walk up to the railroad tracks, cross the bridge, and then follow it out to Jester Boulevard. The girls' third option is to walk up to the railroad tracks, cross the bridge, then immediately descend down a hill and follow it north until they reach a blind hill which they must ascend. They'll then need to walk through a stretch of flattened land before they can finally exit the park. Now that we understand the 3 paths that the girls had available to them, I'd like to point out that the distance between the 3 exit points is exactly the same. In fact, it could be argued that paths 2 and 3 are significantly slower than path 1 due to the difficult terrain and the fact that the girls would have had to travel west, a direction that would take them away from their destination. If time was truly the reason for going this way, then why choose the slowest and most difficult path? In this part of the video, I'm going to show you the trail that the girls took up to the railroad tracks and where they encountered the gang. The girls would have started their journey into the park by walking up to the parking lot that you see on the left side of the screen. They would have walked through the stretch of open land to where the fence is. If you look closely at this picture, you can see a city light on the north side of the field. This is quite possibly the only source of light that the girls would have had available to them as they made their way up to the fence. This tree line runs parallel with the fence, and as I mentioned in my previous video, it would have made it impossible for the girls to have seen what was around the corner. After slipping through the fence, the girls would have headed north along the trail. If we switch over to a ground view, we can see that the overgrowth from the trees blocks the view of the path leading up to the railroad tracks. The girls would have had to walk around this tree before heading north up towards the tracks. It was at this point that they encountered the Sandoval brothers, 2 of the gang members that did not bother the girls. I believe, unfortunately, that it was very shortly after this point that they encountered the rest of the gang. What I simply do not understand about the situation is why wouldn't the girls have turned around once they heard the gang members up ahead? They probably would not have been able to see them until they were up close to the railroad tracks. However, these guys were all drunk and would most likely have been swearing at each other loudly. I don't believe that the girls stumbled across them blindly, and the evidence supports that they did not have a significant fear of them either, or they would have not felt comfortable trying to walk past them. This leads me to wonder as to the mental state of both girls. Is it possible that they were under the influence of drugs or alcohol, which they might have gotten while at the pool party? When we take into consideration that Jennifer's father, Randy Ertman, had admitted to having a problem with alcohol, this leads me to believe that Jennifer might have had access to alcohol at an early age. When put into context, this could explain their decision for trying to walk past the gang members. However, it does not explain their reason for being in the park. Most retellings of this story say that the girls took the shortcut for the sole purpose of making Elizabeth's curfew. But as we've already established in part 2, the girls were already too late to make this curfew, and they were in the park of their own free accord. Since we know that the girls were good friends with Gina, and were so familiar with this shortcut that they could take it late at night, even despite the poor visibility, is it possible that this shortcut might have actually been their normal path for when they were over on this side of town? It's strange to think that the parents of the girls would have felt comfortable with them walking around the city so late at night, especially considering that there had already been 249 murder cases in Houston, Texas since the beginning of that year, which works out to on average 1 or 2 per day. In the next part, we'll be taking a look at the parents' response to finding out that their daughters were missing, the timeline in which the police were brought in, and the reason why I believe there's still a lot more to this case than was previously reported. I look forward to sharing that information with you in part 3. I will see you at the next one. Hello and welcome to the bonus content of Innocence Lost, Part 3. In today's video, I'm going to present to you a very interesting discovery regarding the Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena case. And this new discovery that I found actually provides a very simple and logical reason for why the girls took the shortcut through TC Jester Park. Now before we get into all of that, I need to first circle back into how this discovery was made. You see, a few weeks ago, I stumbled across a very interesting picture on Pinterest. This picture was posted by a woman named Maria, and it's a picture of Elizabeth's parents, Adolfo and Melissa Pena. The parents are wearing white t-shirts with a photograph of both girls. Now, the reason that this particular photograph is important is because it appears to have been chronologically taken after the girls' high school yearbook photos. And I actually believe there's a chance that this picture was taken on the night of the pool party, or at least very close to it. And here's why I think that this might be the case. If you look at this picture, you'll notice that Elizabeth Pena has bangs. Now if you go onto Pinterest and you look up the Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena case, you can see younger pictures of both girls, and you'll notice that in these earlier pictures, Elizabeth never has bangs. But in this one particular photograph, she does, and that stands out to me. Another thing that stands out is that the shirt that Jennifer is wearing in this picture is not dissimilar to the one that she had laid across her head during the autopsy photos. I can't say for certain that this is the same shirt as the one that she wore to the pool party that night, but I do believe that there's a chance that this picture was taken on June 24th, if not on that night. Another thing that really stands out to me about this picture is that I noticed that Jennifer Ertman is not smiling. Jennifer and Elizabeth tend to be a little bit different in this regard. When it comes to taking photos, Elizabeth will usually smile in pretty much every picture that she's in, whether she's there by herself or with family or friends. Jennifer Ertman is usually a little bit more subdued. She'll sometimes give a half smile in pictures where she's just there by herself, but if we go back and look at the earlier pictures of Jennifer and Elizabeth together, Jennifer is always smiling. She always smiles when she takes pictures with her friends, but not on this particular night, possibly the night of the pool party, and perhaps even the last photo that was taken of the girls. And in my opinion, this is a red flag, because at least on the surface of things, Jennifer Ertman should be having a great time right now. She's spending time with her friend Elizabeth. The two of them are going to go hang out with Gina Escamilla later on in the evening. You would think that this would be a pretty exciting night for Jennifer, but she doesn't look particularly happy in this photograph, and it almost feels like something might be on her mind. It makes me wonder if it has something to do with the fact that she's going to have to walk back home by herself later that night. You see, there's something that I haven't mentioned up to this point in my video series, and that something is that Jennifer Ertman was having to let herself into the family home with a spare key that her parents had made up for her. What I'm going to share with you next is actually going to be quite shocking, but this series is about uncovering the truth, and I want this to be known because we need to know what these girls were really up against. This information comes directly from the book Pure Murder, written by the late Corey Mitchell, who had the chance to sit down and interview both the Penas and the Ertmans in the years after the crime. This book was written based off the information that he collected from both families, along with Corey Mitchell's own findings. I'm going to take a minute now to read 3 separate articles from Pure Murder. When she turned 13, she asked her parents for her own set of house keys. It was not for sneaky, ulterior motives. The Ertmans had 2 doors in the back of their home. One was a regular door, and the other was a door made of metal burglar bars, which was necessary because they lived on a nice street in one of the lower quality areas of the Heights. Jennifer wisely said, "Mom, can I have my own keys so I don't have to keep bothering you?" Sandra believed her daughter had proven she was responsible enough, so she had an extra set of keys made for her. Randy dropped Jennifer off at Elizabeth's house on Lamont Lane, approximately 4.5 miles away from their home. Jennifer did not lean over to give her father a goodbye kiss. She had recently gotten out of the habit due to embarrassment, being a teenager and all. "Be home by midnight," her father reminded her. Sandra felt safe about letting her daughter go out for the night with friends. Jennifer had her pager and also cash in her purse. Her mother always left $35 on Jennifer's dresser every Thursday for allowance. Jennifer also received the same amount on Sundays and always kept a $10 bill in her pants pocket in case of emergency, or if she needed to call a taxi cab. Sandra made sure her daughter knew that if she ever needed a ride home, all she had to do was get to a payphone and call her parents. They would come to get her, no matter the situation. So yes, it's quite shocking as to what was written here in this book. Reading between the lines, it appears as though Randy and Sandra Ertman were expecting Jennifer to either walk home that night, get a ride back from one of her friends, or take a taxi cab back to their house. I'm going to show you the path that Elizabeth Pena and Jennifer Ertman would have taken. Now this map is not exactly perfect, but it's a pretty close representation of the way that they would have likely gone back home. According to the Google Map estimates, it would have taken about 35 minutes for the girls to reach Elizabeth's home on foot. Keep in mind that they would have been traveling at night, so the amount of time that this trip would have actually taken might have been significantly longer. As we deduced in part 2, the girls were not in the park to make Elizabeth's 11:30 p.m. curfew, because they encountered the gang at roughly the same time. Therefore, they would not have had enough time to make this curfew regardless of which way they chose to go back. They were also traveling with 2 other friends, so it would have been safer and probably easier for them to just keep heading down West 34th Street, and then they could have gone up to TC Jester Boulevard once they hit the intersection. Alternatively, they could have also taken West 34th Street down to a road called Roslyn, which would take them very close to Elizabeth's house on Lamont Lane. This route would have actually been faster for the girls than had they gone up TC Jester Boulevard, and probably it would have even been faster than the route that they tried to take through the park. Again, this leads credence to the theory that the girls were not concerned about trying to make their curfew, or that the curfew even existed for them in the first place. But there is one very relevant point that we must keep in mind, which is that Jennifer Ertman had not told her parents that she was planning to spend the night at Elizabeth's house. This implies that she was planning to walk back home and would have arrived at her house well after her midnight curfew, something that her parents claimed that she had never done before. According to Google Maps, this journey would have taken her at least 2 hours to complete on foot, giving the route that they did take through the park an additional level of plausibility. So why do I think that the girls decided to take the shortcut through TC Jester Park? Well, in my opinion, it's for the simple fact that it would have saved Jennifer Ertman a considerable amount of time in the nearly 5-mile walk that she had in front of her. If you put yourself in her position, you're out late at night in a very sketchy area of a big city. You're probably not going to want to be out on the streets walking around any more than you have to, and since there isn't really anywhere that's safe for them to be, at least according to this map from crimegrade.org, it would make sense for Jennifer to want to get back home as quickly as possible. She has a very long walk in front of her, and so it would be very much to Jennifer's advantage to do what she can to save time here and there. The other person who could have played a role in their decision to go through the park was their friend, Sheena Escamilla, who lived near the Clearbrook apartment complex and would have been familiar with the shortcut. She could have potentially suggested this to Jennifer Ertman if she had been looking for a more expedient way to get back home. One other thing that must be considered in all of this is that Sandra Ertman had actually spoken to her daughter over the phone when the girls were over at the Silver Creek apartment complex. Why is it that Jennifer's parents did not arrange a time to come and pick her up, leaving her instead to have to find her way back home by walking through the sketchy and dangerous streets of Houston, Texas?